What are you talking about, Lord Captain? Look, Lady Theodora couldn't care less if some eggheads measured my brains or not. It's not about the seal on your forehead, get it? It's about what's in your gut, if it's rotten or not. My gut's stronger than the adamantine on this here ship. And my implants are better than the ones they put in you on your Terra. If they weren't, I wouldn't have lived as long as I have. It was just my nerves playing up. Something about our little saint doesn't sit right with me, and I trust my gut. Oh sure, she seems straight as an arrow and as predictable as a hangover after drinking. But when I look at her, something about her makes my brain itch. After that conversation, I tried to listen to what was being said about her. Beyond the door, what I heard was strange. Blood in her past, twilight in her present, and something like a star leading her. But where is it leading her? I saw several roads, and all of them frightened me. It certainly wouldn't hurt. I'll keep a watch on her too. If only I knew what it meant. Maybe it means danger for her. Or maybe danger coming from her. Lyra, an outlying world in the Heathen Stars region. In the Koronus Expanse, the deeper you go, the less visible the Astronomicon gets, and the less people know about the Imperium. The arrival of a rogue trader is the best thing that can happen to a world like that. The very best. It's an out-of-the-way planetoid between two faint stars. On Lyra, a dozen local tyrants fight over 5 measly continents. But they use everything they can to win, from poison to psykers. I haven't been there in many years, but there's nothing for me to miss. Trust me. But here on the ship is a different story altogether. I saw more wonders in my first year serving Lady von Valancius than I'd seen in my whole life on Lyra. Like my first journey through the warp, I was in bed for 3 days. I felt like supernovas were exploding in my head. I only found out later that I'd gotten off easy. Just through the bulkhead, in the bay next to mine, a whole team turned into... Look at me rambling on, Lord Captain. Pay no attention. It wasn't like it was a very fun trip, Lord Captain. But look, if you want to be entertained, I'm the woman for the job. I'll entertain you with one of the stories from my collection, no problem. But if you want to hear about the time I melted everyone in the bay next door, well, I just don't really want to go into the details on that one, all right? Oh, I embroidered wall hangings in honor of our national heroes. I did the same thing I do here, Lord Captain. Divining. Our rulers prized the ability to see into the future. Every psyker that could be found was worth a small fortune on Lyra. There's no such thing as a peaceful life on Lyra. People like me were especially sought after. They'd pick psykers up wherever they found them, buy kids off their parents, even just abduct them. Take me, for instance. I got taken from my street gang. The older kids sold me when they noticed there was something off about me. The ruling dynasties had schools where they trained us and beat us black and blue. And then they packed us off to serve. Some of us held on for a long time, but others didn't last. Not everyone's as smart and talented as me, you know. Some people crossed the line and were out of commission before their time. Theodora von Valancius paid a visit to the ruler I was serving at the time. I don't know what the visit was for, and it's no business of mine anyway. I can still remember the way the voices in my head changed when I looked at her. They were practically screaming. She had so much behind her, and plenty ahead of her too. As I gawped at her, all of a sudden I heard a whisper. A hint, a suggestion, nothing more. But I know the difference between idle chatter and a real threat. I seized my chance and approached Theodora. I managed to whisper a couple of words in her ear before the wardens dragged me away. They beat me and locked me up. No wonder. It wasn't my place to converse with outsiders. And then Theodora's people came for me. They broke down the wall, butchered the guards. Also, I could tell them my warning in full. So I said the rest, but I didn't want to go back to my old life. And so I entered the service of the Van Valancius dynasty. A few times. Not many. And if I think about it, why would I want to? I've got everything I need here. All the whispers I hear are familiar ones. They almost feel like family. And if I want to hear about the nightmares off the ship, I can. After some Amisec. But don't go getting the wrong idea. If I have to, I'll follow you to the edge of the galaxy. Of course, Lord Captain. You bet I do, Lord Captain. Okay, so we went to Footfall once. Well, I mean, Lord Captain Theodora went to Footfall a lot. But on that occasion, she took me with her for some reason. My day had gotten off to a bad start. My head had been yammering since I woke up, but there was nothing else for it. I had to go. We arrived at the place. And what a place! All the gentlemen and ladies dressed to kill, showing off their encrusted implants, all clustered around little tables. Well, turned out it was a gaming den. And not just any gaming den, but one run by somebody with deep pockets for people with just as much cash to splash. You should have seen it. People gambling away planets in a game of regicide. Anyway, so the Lord Captain wanted me to help her beat some guy. So I tell her, the chips won't land in your favor. You'll get a bad hand. Don't sit down at that table, your ladyship. But did she listen? Of course she didn't. If there's one thing she never lacked, it's stubbornness. So they sat down and the cards were dealt. I'm hovering around like I'm not involved, but I'm keeping my eye on things. And everything in my head keeps getting louder and louder. Anyway, it's a good thing I realized in time that my mind wasn't going haywire over a losing hand, but something else. I made some excuse to drag the Lord Captain up from the table and took her away from that place. And a few minutes later, the room where we'd been... It turned out some wise guy had the same bright idea to bring a pet psyker along with him. One of those ones who just scuttle around in Footfall's underbelly. And the psyker just freaked out, I guess. After all the commotion, people went to see what happened in the room. And they'd all gone for each other's throats. Literally. With teeth. And I think they completely detached that asteroid from Footfall and pushed it off into open space so it would head off toward the local star. Lord Captain, forgive me, but it would be like talking to a person born blind about colors. I could spend hours explaining, but it wouldn't make any sense to you. Every psyker feels their connection with the warp in their own way. One person might see spots and shadows out of the corner of their eye. Another feels fingers running down their spine. As for me, I've got a door in my head. One that's open just a crack. There's no way to close it, no matter how hard I try. I've just had to get used to the whispers from the other side. When I need to use it for work, I listen in more closely. But I usually just try not to notice it. Training, habit, and a little Amasec and a couple other things you can get on the lower decks. If you put all those together, it makes things bearable. Sometimes I even wonder if I'm imagining half the voices I hear. You know, when life on board gets a little boring. Better than listening to the living, anyhow. Well, if the door opens, that means somebody's planning to come in, right? But screw them. They're not coming through. Trust me, I know how to keep my valuable head locked up tight. Only losers who are afraid of their own gift lose control. Or idiots who never figure out what they are before it's too late. Or little kids who want to play around with their shiny new toy. If you don't know the limits of your abilities, or you're always bouncing around in your own head, that's a recipe for disaster. All right, that's what I'm here for after all. So, I'm just going to lean on that door in my head a little more, prick up my ears, and listen to what the warp's got to say about you. If you'll allow it, I can listen right now. All right, let's hear what they're whispering about you, The glow of dawn bursts forth from its prison. Dungeon walls cannot contain the dark essence wallowing in the dust. A naive cub pushes his nose into a familiar hand, one that holds death in twisted glass. Cherish it or cast it off as a burden. The sword of change has already been raised. What is one more life to it? I'm sorry, Lord Captain. The voices are going wild. I can't make out a thing. I'll try to rein them in, somehow. But for now... All right. Let's hear what they're whispering about you, I'm sorry, Lord Captain. The voices are going wild. I can't make out a thing. I'll try to rein them in, somehow. But for now... None of the officers knew the Lord Captain well. Not even Abelard, and she was always closer to him than anyone else. She told me from the off that if I ever listened to anything in the warp about her without her permission, I'd be going out through the airlock. I'm not an idiot, so I never stuck my nose where it didn't belong. Only when I was asked. It's hard to wrap my head around the fact that she's gone. Lady von Valancius gave me everything I have. She opened the stars to me and the paths between them. I still think I can hear her voice. The little sister is afflicted with her own set of voices. Ones that whisper to her about corruption and heresy. The silly girl doesn't realize that if she wants to find the source, she needs to start by looking in her own head. Of course. Always at your service. Whenever you need me.